Living in London can be hard work. It's noisy, it's busy, there's a constant hustle and bustle. We all need somewhere to escape to. And this week, I'll be tracking down some of those special places and finding out what hard work goes into keeping these little havens from disappearing. I'll be getting exclusive access to the HQ of London's black cab drivers, meeting some green-fingered enthusiasts fighting for the future of their local park, and exploring a synagogue, which was once at the heart of the old Jewish East End. But first up, I'm off to Tooting Bec Lido in South London. Lidos are wonderful exotic oases, like little bits of the seaside in the middle of the city. And swimming outdoors can be an exhilarating experience, especially in this weather, and in the full knowledge that the hustle and bustle of London is just over the Lido Wall. And me and my mates spent many happy summers frolicking in our local Lido, where in fact between the hours of 6:30 and 8 AM it was free entry for competitive swimmers and the like. Thereafter there was a 10p entrance fee, so of course we hid in the changing rooms till just gone 8 and snuck out looking all innocent and lovely. In the first half of the 20th century, Lidos made a big splash across Britain, and nowhere was the craze for open-air bathing bigger than in London. In fact, there were a staggering 60 Lidos and open-air swimming pools in the capital alone. But times change, and today only 8 of them survive, including this magnificent one in Tooting. And I've come to meet Janet Smith, who regularly takes the plunge here. She's an expert on the history of places like this. Janet, where does the word Lido come from?
Well, really, it comes from the beach in Venice. And incidentally, I'm sure it should really be pronounced Lido because it is Italian, and that is obviously how the Italians would say it. But
and we're English, we can't speak foreign.
Well, nearly all of us say Lido, so there we go.
I know you've written a marvellous book on the subject, but where did your interest in the Lido begin?
Very much here at Tooting Bec. It's one of those places where you can't believe you're still in London because you've got all the trees surrounding it, so you feel as though you're in the countryside. You've got this lovely expanse of blue water and the multicoloured seaside cubicle doors, and it is an oasis. It's a great place of escape from all the stresses of London life, and everything else just stops when you're here.
Except the trains.
Except the trains, but you get used to the train.
Tooting, built back in 1906, was one of the first London Lidos. By the 1930s, outdoor swimming was big business, and Lidos were being built all over the capital. They were hugely popular and always teeming with eager swimmers. And even bathing beauties like these were unfazed by all that unheated water.
By then there was a general obsession with sunshine and being out in the sunshine, and there was a national fitness campaign in the 30s to get the whole of Britain fit and healthy, so it was just a very fashionable thing to be in the open air taking exercise. And of course in those days people were not going abroad on holidays in the way we do today. The cheap package holiday had not been invented, so this was a summer holiday resort for them to come to a Lido.
And presumably it was the package holiday that led to the demise of a lot of London's Lidos today.
That certainly played a big part. They became less well attended because people were drifting away to Spain to have a summer holiday in the sun.
Well, you did mention this obsession with the sun. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to have an obsession with the sun in this country.
This was the great Achilles heel always for the pools, that the weather could never be guaranteed.
Most of London's Lidos have now disappeared, but Tooting's gamely soldiering on. Much of the credit for its survival must go to the South London Swimming Club, a group of dedicated swimmers who are prepared to brave the freezing temperatures even in the cold winter months. That is freezing. What with that and the enormous size of this pool, it's the perfect environment for competitive swimmers to train, especially that particularly hardy breed, the cross-channel swimmer. Tooting Lido regular Sarah Hamer recently completed her first solo channel swim. So, Sarah, you swam the English Channel. I suppose my first question would be, what made you want to do it?
It's something I wanted to do since I was a child, and it's kind of pinnacle of all swims, really.
And how long did it take?
14 hours.
14 hours?
14 hours, yeah. The last hour was agonising.
So the Lido had played its part in acclimatising you to the temperature of the water?
Oh, definitely. All throughout the year I've been coming to the Lido. Even Christmas Day, that they have swims, and we can only do a width then because it's just so cold. But great way to acclimatise. It's been fantastic here. You know, the people are so welcoming, and lots of people have sort of tips and things like that that they can give you. But also the pool itself, it's just short of 100 metres long, so I don't have to turn every sort of 25 metres that you normally would in other pools.
That's the best bit. That's the only puff of breath you get.
Yeah, I guess so.
And you came back here after you swam?
Yeah, there were loads of people here. The welcome I had was just incredible. You know, it's quite overwhelming, but everyone was kind of clapping and cheering, and you know, that was really good sort of community spirit.
After a quick rub down, I'm off to find out more about the off-duty habits of another tight-knit group of Londoners. Taxi! A black cab driver. The one thing we can never imagine disappearing from our London streets is the good old London black cab. But where, I've always wondered, do the cabbies go when they're not on the road? The man with all the answers is cabbie Peter Raymond. So where are you taking me, Peter?
I'm going to take you to the Warwick Avenue cab shelter. There's a cabman's sanctuary where they hide from the passengers.
So, Peter, this is it, the Warwick Avenue Cabmen's Shelter.
Yeah.
What a lovely looking place.
Yes, one of the 13 remaining.
And how many at the peak of these would there have been?
Oh, in between the wars, I'm led to believe there's between 50 and 60.
It's got the feel of a sort of a cricket pavilion almost, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
I, of course, know it's like the TARDIS, that inside there's going to be 4 or 5 giant rooms, aren't there?
Oh, yes.
Should we go and have a look?
Yeah. And, of course, all the brains of the nation.
Well, Peter, I've got to say, I'm only slightly disappointed. It's the same size on the inside as it is on the outside.
Mm.
But it's cosy, isn't it? Lovely.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And what's your first experience of coming to these places?
Well, it was Clapham Common shelter, which is no longer with us. And I'd been driving probably about 12 years before I came in, because you need a little bit of a ego to get in here, you know. The older drivers, you know, would be the type that would have the Mac with the belt done up, the tie, the trilby hat, and it's quite daunting, but once you've stepped in, you realise it's not as bad as you think, you know.
And once they've plucked up the courage, cabbies can enjoy the delights of an all-day cooked breakfast, and there's also plenty of advice for the new guys.
The main thing about coming into a cab shelter is you learn. Should I take a cheque? When do I ask for the money first? You know, and things like that. And how do I deal with this problem and that problem? And of course, you've got years and years of experience, so you just tap in and they'll tell you what to do. It's great.
So as a youngster, you're just listening to the voices of experience.
Oh, yeah.
And tell me a little bit about the history of these places, Peter.
Well, the first one was in Acacia Road. Evidently, was a local fella there called Captain Armstrong. And we're talking about horse cab days. And whenever he came out to get a cab in bad weather, obviously cab drivers were hiding in cafes, which in those days sold intoxicating liquor. And so if he actually found a cab driver, he was usually and so he thought there's got to be a better way. So he thought, if I give him a shed with no drink available, I would get a dry and a sober cab driver. And so that was how it all started.
The shelters are now run by the Cabman's Shelter Fund, of which Peter is the secretary.
This was restored about 12 years ago, thanks to the GLC.
Lovely what they've done with the old place, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, well, because they made it a bit white clean now, you know. We didn't have the environmental people coming round in those days, you know.
And do you get specific crowds in specific huts?
You get people who use any shelter that they're close to, and then you get people who come here regularly because they like the crowd, yeah, you know, Arsenal supporters and things like that, you know.
Well, we don't want to go in that one. So presumably the first rule here is you have to be a cab driver to come in?
Yes.
And are there any other rules?
Well, yes, we have a list of them there.
The rules are all there in black and white, but they're not always strictly adhered to.
Especially in the night time, you get people who had friendly women who would come in and could be...
The mind absolutely boggles.
Yes. could be bribed to...
You've got to be some romantic to bring a girl in here, I can say that, eh?
Yes.
On a Friday night.
And she's got to be... she's got to be very brave.
Coming up, I'll be visiting another little green building, which has become the hub of a local community. The London Square is one of our city's greatest assets. There are a staggering 600 of these green and pleasant places in our capital, but we don't always value them as much as we should. During the war, many had their railings ripped up and melted down to make munitions. And since then, many others have become overgrown and neglected. But it's not all bad news. Some Londoners are taking matters into their own hands. The local people who live around here, Arnold Circus in Shoreditch, are determined to honour this area's past and restore this wonderful little park to its former glory. I've met up with Nazim and Lila to learn a bit more. So here we are in the rather lovely Arnold Circus. Could you tell me the history of it?
Yeah, Arnold Circus is an extraordinary place. If you'd been here in the end of the 19th century, you would have found that you were in the middle of Dickensian slums, you know, really typical old slums, unsanitary, overcrowded, crime-ridden, etc. And in around the 1880s, the London County Council decided that what they needed to do was actually pull it all down and build what is around Arnold Circus, which is the Boundary Estate. And it's a very visionary bit of social planning. And in order to actually complete this whole new world that they were offering the locals, they said, well, fine, we're going to have open space in the middle. And so instead of throwing away the rubble of the old slums, what they did was to actually shape it into this rather extraordinary hill, which is now called Arnold Circus. And on top of that, there was a large kind of plateau that you can see here. But then they went one step further and they said, OK, what we'll do is to put up a bandstand. And the bandstand became the focal point for the community.
In common with lots of London squares, the brass band was a regular Sunday feature. Sadly, times have changed and Tower Hamlets Council have now more pressing priorities. As a result, the circus is overgrown and underused.
One girl who works in my shop who lives on the estate, and she's 17, and she'd never been up on the bandstand. She's lived on the estate all her life.
What we want to do is to induce people to come up here again, because there's a great deal of kind of fear and mythology that's grown up around the place.
We had a picnic here this summer in July, a picnic for the local community that was great fun.
And Layla, why do you feel it's so important to revive this?
It's a real treasure, you know. It's architecturally, it's so pretty, and it's such a pleasant place to be.
The constituency for the circus, you know, if you can call it that, has really changed so much since the days when it was in its heyday. You know, then it was very, very much white, working class, and although that is still a very strong element in the area. There's now a very strong Bengali population, and to have a place that actually could be a meeting place for different communities seems to be incredibly important particularly at this point in time.
The diverse community that surrounds Arnold Circus can be seen all over the East End, an area which has always attracted new immigrants. For most Londoners, Brick Lane is synonymous with a good old curry. But what I suspect a lot of Vindaloo connoisseurs don't know is this street was once the heart of the Jewish community in London. Between the wars, there were over 120,000 Jewish people living in the East End, between Stepney, Mile End and Whitechapel. Most had arrived in the latter part of the 19th century, immigrants from Russia and Eastern Europe. Yiddish theatre actress Anna Selnicka is now one of the few Jewish people left in the area.
No, we won't.
So Anna, what were your early memories of the Jewish East End?
It was Jewish. It was definitely Jewish. There was a synagogue in every second street in the East End. Some streets even had two synagogues. All the shops were Jewish, the delicatessen shops, and there were many restaurants, Jewish, kosher. All the stall holders were Jewish. It used to be a 100% Jewish market, and the street is called Hessel Street. And although the people who came to buy here were Jewish, they used to buy their live fowl over there and go around the corner at the bottom and then have it slaughtered. The shochet was there to do it for.
Anna's father, Meir Selnicka, a famous Jewish actor, brought his young family to the area in the 1920s to be close to the nearby Yiddish theatres. So, Anna, you started in the theatre when you were very young?
Very young. As a matter of fact, I have a photograph of myself here when I was 7 years old, and this is what I looked like.
I say, how marvellous. A bowler hat and a cigar by the looks of
A bowler
things.
hat and a cigarette, yes. So there you go, 7 years old I was here.
Yeah.
When my father was in the Yiddish theatre, which is across the road here, the Grand Palais, and he looked across and he saw this street and what was going on in this street and the smells that came out of this street, he had to write a poem about it. Would you like to hear it?
Love
It's
to.
in Yiddish. It goes like this. Hessel Street, my entire Hessel Street, dich vergessen, weil ich kein will nicht. Bei dir ist doch die ganze Menschheit gleich. Die behandelst mit Chesed, sei Urem, sei reich. Deine Heißnis sind die wahre
So what happened to the market in the end?
People moved away. All the Jews moved away from here, gradually. Things happened gradually, it didn't happen just overnight.
As they made more money, they moved to more affluent areas.
Exactly. And they moved to better places and better homes, and that's how it all happened until there was no one left. Different people have arrived. People who were never here before arrived here and settled here in this district. And the Jews left and they took over. And that's how it is.
And isn't it ironic that the chicken shop is still a chicken shop, but now it's a Muslim?
It is amazing. It is amazing, but that was the chicken shop. And now I look and our Asian friends live here. They have made their home here. But as you just said, the chicken shop is still there. People want chickens.
Before the Second World War, there were over 150 synagogues in the East End. Now there's just 4 left. And this is one of the oldest, Sandys Row Synagogue. And I'm here to meet the husband and wife team who helped to keep it going. This building wasn't always a synagogue. It started life as a church, built by the French Huguenots who settled in this part of London in the late 1700s. When the Jewish community began to move into the area, it was converted to become the centre of their religious life. In its heyday, hundreds of people congregated here, but now there are only a handful of regular worshippers left, including Jimmy and Stella Wilder. And what is it you love about this synagogue?
It's very warm and cosy. You can come here any day and feel comfortable. We've been coming here for 40 years now. I come here, I clean the silver, we change the curtains, do the lights, do everything to keep it going. Everybody that comes here comes through the door and says, "Oh, isn't it beautiful?" All the people that have been members have left little mementos in memory of their loved family. It could be any occasion, it could be a marriage, it could be a bar mitzvah, it could be anything, a death. And so they put these plaques up, and they're all on the places where the people used to sit. So when their families come to visit the shul, they can see that belonged to my grandpa or grandma, and they're very happy about that.
And presumably that in its heyday, this synagogue would have been thronging with people.
Definitely, but unfortunately, it's an old congregation.
We had quite a lot of membership, over 300 families, but now they're getting old and dwindling, like we are actually. And so there comes a time when you've got to give it up, you can't keep on.
And ultimately, what do you think the future holds for this synagogue?
I would think that in 5 years' time, we would be closing. What would become of it, I haven't got any idea.
I hope it's not in my lifetime.
Next time on Disappearing London, homes and gardens. From the small and perfectly formed to the very, very large. And I'm taking to the ice at a rink whose days are numbered.